The bathroom smelled like his soap and her silence. Naomi sat on the edge of the bed in her robe, her feet flat on the cool hardwood floor, and she listened to the sound of the shower running. The same sound it made every morning. The same rhythm. The same steam curling under the bathroom door. Everything looked normal. Everything sounded normal. But something had shifted in the air of the room, and she could feel it the way you feel weather before the sky changes, something tight in the chest, something quiet behind the ears. Patrick's smartwatch was on the nightstand. It buzzed once. She had not meant to look. She would tell herself that later when she went back over the morning in her mind, the way you replay a car accident frame by frame. She had not meant to look. But the screen lit up and the preview text appeared before she could look away. Brianna, last night was perfect. Miss you already. Naomi read it twice. Then she set the watch back down, face down, exactly where it had been. Her hands did not shake. Her breathing did not change. She sat very still and let the words settle into her like something cold and heavy sinking to the bottom of still water. She got up. She walked to her bathroom drawer, the one on her side of the double vanity, and she opened it. She had been meaning to clean it out for weeks. She did it now, slowly, methodically, taking out lip balm and face lotion and a stray hair tie. And there, near the back, half tucked under a travel-size moisturizer, was an earring. It was not hers. Small gold, a little hoop with a tiny diamond chip. Pretty, unremarkable, the kind of thing a woman might not notice she lost. Naomi held it between two fingers and looked at it for a long moment. She thought about all the times Patrick had used her bathroom instead of his own. She thought about the nights he had come home late smelling like a bar she had never been to. She thought about the business trip to Atlanta 3 months ago, the one where he had barely called. She placed the earring on the counter. Then she walked back to the bedroom and sat down again. The shower was still running. She had 9 minutes before he would come out. She knew his routine the way you know a song you did not mean to memorize. She used those 9 minutes. She picked up his phone from the other nightstand. He had left it unlocked, something he never did, and she scrolled. She was not frantic about it. She moved through the messages the way you move through a house you know in the dark. Calm. Certain. Already knowing what she would find before she found it. 237 messages to a contact saved as the most recent one she had already seen through the watch. The ones before it told a story that stretched back almost a year. A year. Dinners. Weekend afternoons. I can't stop thinking about you. When can I see you again? I wish things were different. The usual lines. The same script every man uses when he is trying to keep two lives from touching. Naomi put the phone back, exactly where it had been. She sat with her hands folded in her lap and looked at the window. The morning light was coming in flat and clean, the kind of light that makes a room look honest. Outside, she could hear a neighbor's dog barking twice and then stopping, a car backing out of a driveway, the ordinary sounds of an ordinary Tuesday. The shower turned off. She heard him step out, heard the soft drag of his towel, the click of the cabinet. She smoothed her robe and looked at her reflection in the mirror across the room. Her face was the same face it had always been, deep brown skin, wide eyes, the small silver earrings she had put on that morning because they were her grandmother's and she wore them when she needed to feel steady. She looked steady now, steadier than she felt, but steady enough. Patrick came out in a cloud of steam, already dressed from the waist down, pulling his shirt over his head. He looked at her and smiled. That easy, practiced smile. "Morning, babe." "Morning," she said. Her voice was her own voice, smooth and normal. She was proud of that. He sat on his side of the bed to put on his shoes, and she watched him and she thought, "You have been coming home to me for 6 years and sleeping in this bed, and using my bathroom and kissing me goodbye, and the whole time there was another woman texting your watch." She thought all of this and did not say a single word of it. She was already thinking ahead. She was already asking herself, what do I need? What do I take? Who do I call first? She was not going to do what she had seen other women do, the screaming, the throwing of things, the public breakdown that somehow made the man the center of the story. No, Patrick was not going to be the center of her story. Not today, not ever again. He picked up his watch and strapped it on. She watched him glance at the screen. She watched his jaw tighten just slightly, a movement so small that a woman who had not been watching him for 6 years would have missed it entirely. He slid the watch face against his palm for a half-second and then looked up and asked if she wanted coffee. "I already made some," she said. He nodded and went downstairs, and she sat there on the edge of the bed for one more minute. Just one more. She let herself feel the weight of it, the loss, the waste, the quiet humiliation of loving someone who was busy being somewhere else. She let herself feel it fully. Then she got up, got dressed, and started making a plan. Because Naomi Carter did not fall apart, she made plans, and the one taking shape in her mind right now was going to be very, very good. Patrick kissed her on the cheek before he left. She let him. She even touched his arm briefly, a reflex, 6 years of reflex, and told him to have a good day. He said he would be home by 7. She nodded and watched his car pull out of the driveway and disappear around the corner. Then she went inside, sat at the kitchen table, and took 2 slow breaths. Then she opened her laptop and started working. The first call she made was to Tasha. They had been friends since college, since the second week of freshman year when Naomi had helped Tasha carry boxes up 4 flights of stairs, and Tasha had repaid her with a box of crackers and a lifetime of loyalty. Tasha answered on the second ring, heard the tone in Naomi's voice, and said nothing except, "I'll clear my guest room. Come whenever you're ready. No questions. No drama. Just the door held open." The second call was to Mr. Osai. He was a divorce attorney Naomi had been referred to 2 years ago by a colleague who had gone through a bad one. At the time, she had saved his number in her phone and hoped she would never need it. She needed it now. His assistant put her through within 10 minutes, and he listened quietly as she gave him the broad strokes: 6 years of marriage, a discovered affair, and a growing suspicion about finances that she needed him to help her look into. He did not express surprise or offer sympathy beyond what was professional. He said, "Keep everything you can access, make copies today, and come to my office Thursday morning." She said, "I'll be there." She hung up and sat for another moment, and then she stood up and began. She was not frantic. That was the thing people might not understand if they had seen her moving through that house with a calm that bordered on quiet determination. She was not running away. She was removing herself with intention, the way a surgeon removes something that needs to come out. Clean, deliberate, leaving the body better than she found it. She went to the filing cabinet first. Patrick kept the important papers there: tax returns, bank statements, the mortgage documents, investment account records. She did not take the originals. She photographed every page with her phone and emailed the images to herself and to Mr. Osai's office. She opened the computer that Patrick kept in the study and photographed the account summary pages she could still access, because he had never changed the shared login from early in their marriage. She was thorough, she missed nothing. Then she went upstairs. Her passport was in the drawer. Her grandmother's jewelry was in the small wooden box on the dresser. The photos of her family, the real ones, the printed ones, were in an album on the shelf. She packed these things first, before anything else. Then her clothes, her shoes, the few books she kept by the bed. She moved through the bedroom without looking at his side of the closet, without touching his things, without allowing herself to linger anywhere that felt like grief. She stripped her side of the bed and left his side untouched. By 1 in the afternoon, she had 3 bags packed, her documents photographed, and her car loaded. She stood in the middle of the kitchen one last time and looked at the space, the open shelving she had chosen. The blue tiles above the stove she had painted herself. The small potted plant by the window that had somehow survived 3 years of her forgetting to water it consistently. She watered the plant. She did not know why, she just did. Then she took a note card from the drawer, small and plain and white. She thought for a moment about what to write. She thought about all the things she could say: the hurt, the anger, the years of not knowing, the questions that had no good answers. She thought about writing all of it and decided against every word. She wrote to, "I know." She placed it on the kitchen counter, right where he always set his keys when he came home. He would see it the second he walked in. Then she picked up her handbag, took one last look around, and walked out the front door. She did not slam it. She closed it quietly, the way you close a door when someone is sleeping nearby and you don't want to wake them. There was something fitting about that, the care she took even then, even in leaving. That was the woman she was. Careful, thorough, respectful even when she was not being respected. She drove to Tasha's with the radio off. The afternoon light sat flat on the road ahead of her, and she let the miles go by without music, without podcasts, without anything filling the silence. She needed the silence. She had spent months, maybe longer, in the part of herself that already knew but was not ready to look. She had spent months with too much noise, too much pretending. Now the quiet was hers. Tasha was waiting at the door. She did not ask questions. She took one bag from Naomi's hand and walked her inside and said, "I made food." Naomi sat at Tasha's kitchen table, smaller than her own, with mismatched chairs and a centerpiece of fake sunflowers, and she ate. She ate all of it. She had not realized how hungry she was. Tasha sat across from her and said nothing, and that was exactly right. It was not until after 8 that night, when Tasha had gone to bed and the house was fully quiet, that Naomi sat in the small guest room with the light off and let herself cry. Not the loud kind. The kind that comes out of you without sound, just wet and slow and private. She let it come and she let it go, and when it was done she lay back on the pillow and stared at the ceiling. One night she told herself, "You get tonight. Tomorrow we work." Patrick pulled into the driveway at 7:15. The house was dark. That was the first thing. Usually by this hour there were lights on the kitchen, the living room, the lamp by the stairs that Naomi always turned on around 6 because she said walking into a dark house made her feel like nobody was expecting her. He noticed the darkness before he was even fully out of the car. He unlocked the front door and stepped inside and called her name. The house answered him with nothing. He turned the lights on as he moved from room to room, the kitchen, the hall, the living room, calling her name each time with a little less certainty than the time before. He went upstairs. Her side of the closet was missing clothes. Her bathroom had been cleared of her things. Her books were gone from the nightstand. He stood in the middle of their bedroom, and the quiet had a weight to it. He went back down to the kitchen, and that was when he saw the note card. It was propped against the fruit bowl, small and white and completely still, as if it had been sitting there for hours waiting patiently for him. He picked it up and read the 2 words, and his stomach dropped so fast it was almost physical, like the floor had given way beneath him. "I know." He called her number. It rang 4 times and went to voicemail. He called again. Same thing. He texted Naomi, "Please call me. I can explain." He stared at the screen, and the blue bubble of his own message sat there unanswered, lonely on that white screen. He tried to tell himself she was overreacting. He tried to build the argument in his head, the one he had been building and rehearsing for months in the back of his mind, the one that would soften the truth into something manageable. It wasn't what it looks like. It was a mistake. It meant nothing. "I love you. I chose you. I always came home." But she had not given him the chance to say any of it. She had not screamed. She had not thrown things in his face. She had not given him a dramatic exit he could later reframe as an overreaction. She had just looked at him over breakfast, kissed him goodbye probably, waited for him to leave, and removed herself from his life with the efficiency of someone who had thought it through. That scared him more than anything she could have said. He poured himself a glass of water and leaned against the counter and tried to think. He could go to her mother's. He could try Tasha's. The doorbell rang. He froze for just a second. Then something in him loosened. She had come back. She had come back, and they were going to talk, and he was going to fix this. He was sure of it. He just needed her in the room with him and his words and his eyes, and she would understand that he was sorry, that he He opened the door. It was not Naomi. Brianna stood on his front step in a cream-colored coat, her hair done, her nails done, with a small rolling suitcase beside her, and a smile that was so comfortable and familiar and completely wrong for this moment that Patrick could not immediately process the combination of her face and the suitcase, and the smile all at once. "Surprise," she said, and she laughed a little, nervous and bright and eager. "I know we said we'd wait, but I couldn't stop thinking. I figured if she's gone, then we don't have to hide anymore, right? I thought you might want company." Patrick stared at her. He had told her, in one of those breathless, careless moments that people say things they do not mean to say, that his marriage was almost over. He had said it the way men in his position sometimes say things, not as a fact but as a comfort, a way to keep someone close. He had not meant it. He had not thought she had taken it as a promise. But there she was with a suitcase. "Brianna," he said. His voice came out flat and strange. "What's wrong?" she asked, the smile flickering. He looked at her, really looked at her, maybe for the first time without the cover of secrecy and desire and the particular intoxication of a thing that is forbidden. He looked at her standing on his front step, having arrived at his house with luggage, and he thought about the note card on his kitchen counter. He thought about his wife's side of the closet, bare and clean. He thought about Naomi's voice that morning, steady, warm, completely ordinary, and how that steadiness had been. He now understood something else entirely. "This isn't a good time," he said. "Patrick, this isn't a good time, Brianna." She looked at him for a long moment. He watched her read his face and find nothing encouraging there. The smile faded fully. She looked down at her suitcase and back at him, and she opened her mouth and closed it again. "I'll call you later," he said. He closed the door. He stood behind it with his hand still on the knob, and he listened to the silence, the particular silence of someone standing on the other side of a closed door, deciding what to do. A long pause. Then the soft roll of suitcase wheels on the front path. Then nothing. He slid down the door until he was sitting on the floor. The house was very dark around him. The note card was on the counter. His phone had no new messages. The kitchen light was on, and from where he sat he could see the small potted plant by the window, recently watered. He would notice later, the soil still dark. His wife had left. She had packed her things and taken her documents and left him 2 words and the sound of a door closing quietly. And he had nothing, not a single thing, he could do about it tonight. She woke up at 5:30 in the guest room at Tasha's. The ceiling was pale green. Tasha had painted it herself and called the color sea foam, and Naomi had always thought it looked less like the sea and more like someone's well-meaning mistake. But this morning she lay and stared at it and she thought, "This is a ceiling I have never worried under before. That is something." Her phone had 17 missed calls from Patrick and 1 text that said, "I can explain. Please just let me explain." She set the phone face down on the nightstand. She had cried herself to sleep. She had given herself that one full night of feeling all of it, the raw and ugly and embarrassing grief of being a woman who had loved someone faithfully and been lied to. She had felt it completely. She was done with it now. Not done forever. Grief doesn't work in neat timelines, and she knew that. But she was done with letting it drive. From here on, she was driving. She showered, dressed, and walked into Tasha's kitchen at 6:15. Tasha was already at the stove. She handed Naomi a mug of tea without turning around. They stood in the kitchen together for a few minutes in the kind of silence that good friendships are made of, the kind where nothing needs to be said because everything already is. "Did you sleep?" Tasha asked. "Enough. Do you want to talk?" "Later. Right now I need to make a call." Tasha nodded and stepped aside and gave her the kitchen table. Naomi called Mr. Osai at 8 o'clock exactly. He picked up on the first ring, which told her something she appreciated. He had been expecting her. "Good morning, Mrs. Carter." "Ms. Naomi, just Naomi." A brief pause, then, "Good morning, Naomi." She liked him for that. They talked for 40 minutes. She told him everything she knew, the affair, the messages, the earring, the fact that she had photographed every document in the filing cabinet. He listened with the focused quiet of a person who is building something in their head while you talk. When she finished, he asked 3 questions, all of them practical, none of them about her feelings. What accounts did she have access to? Had she ever been listed on his business documents? And had she kept any records of shared expenses over the years? She had. She had always been meticulous about their shared finances, not because she had suspected anything, but because she was the kind of woman who kept records. Her mother had raised her that way. Track your own money, her mother used to say. Even if it's shared, you better know where it is. She had a folder on her laptop, 3 years of household expenses, shared accounts, investment summaries. She had thought of it as organization. It turned out it was also evidence. "Mr. Osai said, come to my office Thursday. Bring everything. I want to look at those documents you photographed before then. Send them to my assistant today." She said she would. She hung up and sat back and exhaled. There was something about taking action that steadied her in a way that nothing else could have. She had always been this way. She did not do well with waiting. She did not do well with the feeling of standing still while someone else controlled the situation. Patrick had controlled this situation for at least a year, maybe longer. He had made decisions in secret and she had not known, had been going about her days trusting and open and completely unaware. That was over now. The awareness was hers, and she intended to use it. She spent the rest of the morning at Tasha's table with her laptop, going through documents. She organized the photos she had taken, numbered them, created a folder for each account. She looked at joint credit card statements she had not reviewed in months. She had trusted Patrick to handle that side of things, had signed documents when he put them in front of her, had believed his summaries when he gave them. She began to read them now, line by line. Something snagged her attention around 11, a recurring transfer she did not recognize. Small amounts at first, 300 here, 400 there, but consistent, monthly, going somewhere she could not identify from the statement alone. She screenshot it and added it to a folder she labeled, "Questions for Mr. Osai." Tasha brought her lunch at 1 and sat across from her. "How are you actually doing?" Tasha asked. Naomi looked up from her screen. She thought about it honestly. "I am angry," she said, "and I feel stupid, even though I know I shouldn't. And I feel something else underneath all of that, something that I think is relief. Not happy relief. Just the thing you feel when you finally know what you've been sensing for a long time and were afraid to look at." Tasha nodded slowly. "That makes sense." "It does, doesn't it? What are you going to do?" Naomi looked back at her screen. She thought about the documents. She thought about those small monthly transfers. She thought about Brianna's earring in her bathroom drawer and Patrick's easy smile over breakfast that morning. "Everything I am entitled to," she said. Mr. Osai's office was on the 14th floor of a building downtown, and when Naomi stepped off the elevator Thursday morning, she was met by the quiet hum of a professional space that had clearly seen a great deal of human devastation and learned not to show it. The carpet was gray and clean. The receptionist was efficient and kind. There were no boxes of tissues on the waiting room table, which Naomi appreciated more than she could have explained. Mr. Osai himself was a compact man in his late 50s, with reading glasses pushed up on his forehead, and the steady manner of someone who had heard every version of every story and remained unshockable. He shook Naomi's hand and gestured to the chair across from his desk and said, "Let's see what you brought." She had brought everything: her laptop, a printed summary she had organized the night before, and a folder of the photographed documents. She laid them out on his desk with the efficiency of someone presenting a business case rather than the wreckage of a marriage. She had worked hard to make it feel like the former. He went through the documents methodically. She watched his face. He had a good face for this work, it gave very little away. But after about 20 minutes he paused. He picked up 2 pages and looked at them side by side. Then he put them down and looked at her. Did you know Patrick had a separate investment account? Naomi went still. What kind of separate account? He turned his computer screen toward her so she could see what he had pulled up. Using the account numbers from her photographs, he had already begun verifying and cross-referencing. A level of speed that told her he had stayed late the night before looking at what she had sent. This account was opened in his name alone 26 months ago. The transfers you flagged, those small monthly amounts, were going there. But they're not the only deposits. There are larger amounts too. Quarterly. Consistent. I'd estimate the account holds somewhere between $90,000 and $120,000 that does not appear on any of your joint records. Naomi looked at the screen. She read the numbers carefully. She looked up at Mr. Osai. He was hiding money. It appears so. In a marital estate, assets accumulated during the marriage typically belong to both parties regardless of whose name they're in. If this money was accumulated during the marriage, and especially if marital income was funneled into it, you have a significant claim. She sat back in the chair. The feeling that moved through her was not surprise exactly. It was the feeling of a shape becoming clear, of having sensed something without being able to name it, and now the name was there. For 2 years he had been building something on the side, not just a relationship, a whole financial escape route that she was not part of. What does this mean for the case? She asked. It means the case just became significantly more valuable, he said. And it means your husband has some explaining to do in ways that go beyond the personal. She thought about that. His company, he's a portfolio manager. They have compliance rules about personal financial disclosures. Mr. Osai looked at her steadily. He did not say anything. She said, if he didn't disclose this account to his employer, that's a problem. He said, that would be a matter between him and his employer. It is not our concern. Our concern is your settlement. She understood what he was not saying and what she was not saying, and she nodded once and moved on. They spent another 2 hours going through everything: the mortgage, the joint accounts, the valuations, the pension. When they were done, Mr. Os had a clear picture of what she was owed under the law, and she had a clear picture of how completely Patrick had underestimated her. He thought she would leave quietly. He thought 2 words on a note card meant she was done. He thought the woman he had lied to for a year would take her hurt and go away, and let him keep the life he had built with her money and her trust and her years. He had miscalculated badly. She drove back to Tasha's in the afternoon light and she stopped for groceries on the way. She bought the good olive oil and the coffee she liked and a bunch of yellow tulips for the table. Small things. Her things. The beginning of something that looked like her own life rather than a chapter in someone else's. That night she sat at Tasha's kitchen table and opened her notebook and wrote at the top of a fresh page, "What do I want the next version of my life to look like?" She wrote for an hour. She filled 4 pages. The marriage had been 6 years of building something together, and she had built well, had contributed her career and her income and her steady presence and her love. That building had not been wasted. It had given her knowledge and competence, and a clarity about what she would not accept anymore. The next building would be only hers, and it was going to be something. Patrick called her 31 times in 10 days. She knew the count because her phone kept a record, the way phones keep records of everything now, all the little evidence of your life stored in neat rows. 31 calls, 22 texts, 1 voicemail that was 4 minutes long which she listened to once, neutrally, the way you read a document you already understand before you file it away. He said he was sorry. He said it had been a mistake. He said it meant nothing. He said he loved her. He said he had always loved her. He said Brianna was no one. He said if she would just talk to him they could fix this. He used the word fix 3 separate times in a 4-minute voicemail, as if what he had done to their marriage was a broken pipe or a damaged wall, something structural that a skilled person could patch over if they got to it quickly enough. Fix. She deleted the voicemail and did not call back. He showed up at Tasha's on the 3rd day. Naomi heard his car from the guest room window and did not go downstairs. Tasha answered the door. She heard Tasha's voice, measured, direct, not unkind but absolutely clear. "She doesn't want to see you, Patrick. Please respect that." The door closed. His car sat in the driveway for 11 minutes. She timed it from the window and then he drove away. He sent flowers to Tasha's address. Tasha left them on the front step and they wilted in the cold. Naomi watched them from the window over 3 days and felt nothing except a mild curiosity about what he thought flowers were meant to accomplish here. He hired a mediator, or tried to. The mediator's office sent Naomi a formal letter. She forwarded it to Mr. Osai, who responded that his client was pursuing formal legal proceedings and was not available for informal mediation. That was the end of that. Meanwhile, across the city in the house that still had her blue kitchen tiles, things were not going smoothly. Naomi did not know the details at the time. She would learn them later from sources she had not asked, a mutual acquaintance here, a LinkedIn update there. But the picture that formed over those first weeks told a story she could have predicted if she had tried. Brianna had not left the night Patrick closed the door on her. She had come back the next morning. Patrick, alone and rattled and running out of people to call, had let her in. Whether out of loneliness or habit or the simple human need to have another body in a house that had gone too quiet, he had opened the door and she had walked back in with her suitcase. But it was different now, and Brianna was not stupid. The relationship she had believed she was walking into, the one Patrick had implied, suggested, half-promised in the language of a man keeping 2 things alive at once, did not match the reality she found. The man she moved in with was distracted and short-tempered and spending long stretches on the phone with people she was not introduced to. He was not freed and relieved and ready to begin. He was afraid, and the fear made him someone she had not signed up for. She started asking questions. He gave her the soft versions of answers and she accepted them for a while. But the soft versions started running out. The divorce proceedings, he told her, might be complicated. The finances might be involved. He said the word involved in a way that made her look at him differently. Naomi, who knew none of this and wanted to know none of this, was busy. She had found an apartment, a proper one, hers alone, lease in her name, first and last paid with money from her own savings account that Patrick had never been on. She had viewed it on a Tuesday afternoon and signed the paperwork on Wednesday and picked up the keys on Friday. It was smaller than the house. The ceilings were lower. The kitchen was a narrow galley with an old gas stove. She stood in the empty living room the afternoon she got the keys and looked at the bare walls and the clean floors and the light coming in from the west-facing windows. That late afternoon light that was the good kind, the honest kind. Not gold or sentimental, just clean and present. She said out loud to no one, "This is mine." She bought a new bed that weekend, her own, not a bed that had held someone else's secrets in its mattress, hers. She assembled it herself with Tasha's help and they got it wrong twice and right on the 3rd try, and when it was done they sat on it and ate the pizza they had ordered for dinner and Tasha said, "This is a good bed," and Naomi said, "It really is." She was building, quietly piece by piece she was building. And Patrick, in the house across the city, was beginning to feel the ground under him shift in ways he did not yet fully understand. But that understanding was coming. It was already on its way. 3 years before she had ever heard the name Brianna, before she had seen an earring in her bathroom drawer or a text on a smartwatch, Naomi had written a business plan. She had been sitting at their kitchen table on a Sunday afternoon when the idea had come to her whole and bright and complete the way the best ideas sometimes come, not built slowly but arrived, like a door opening. She was a marketing director by profession, had been for 7 years, and she was good at it in the way that people are good at things when they love the process, not just the result. But she had always wanted to work with small businesses, independent ones, the kind owned by people who had something real to sell and no idea how to make the world see it. She had spent 2 Sundays writing it out, a boutique marketing consultancy aimed specifically at small and minority-owned businesses, built around a sliding-scale fee structure so that the people who needed the help most could actually afford it. She had done the numbers. She had outlined the service offerings. She had even sketched a rough logo in the margin of the notebook. She had shown it to Patrick. He had read it and said, "It's a nice idea, but the timing isn't right. We're trying to save for the house extension, maybe in a couple of years." She had closed the notebook and put it on the shelf and not opened it again. She opened it now. It was the second week in her new apartment, a Thursday evening, and she sat at her small kitchen table with the notebook open in front of her, and she read what she had written 3 years ago, and it was still good. It was still real. The market had not changed in ways that made it worse. If anything, she knew more now, had more contacts, had spent 3 more years watching small businesses struggle with their visibility and knowing exactly what they needed. She picked up her pen and started updating. Over the next week, she sent 3 emails to former colleagues she had stayed in touch with. One was a woman named Patricia who had left corporate marketing 2 years ago to run a successful consultancy, and who Naomi trusted for honest advice. Patricia called her back within an hour of the email, and they talked for 90 minutes, and by the end of the call Patricia had given her 4 client referrals and the name of a business accountant. The second email was to a man she had worked with early in her career, who now ran a nonprofit that supported Black entrepreneurs. He responded the next morning asking her to come in for a meeting. The third email was to a former client, a small restaurant owner she had helped with their launch campaign 4 years ago who had since expanded to 3 locations. He replied with 3 words, "Finally, call me." She had a client within the week, then 2, then a third referred by the second. She worked from her kitchen table at first, then from a co-working space she joined downtown. She built a simple website over a weekend, clean, direct, nothing complicated, just what she did and who she did it for and how to reach her. She registered the business name she had written in the margin of the notebook 3 years ago, Bright Signal Co. Naming it felt significant in a way she had not expected. She sat with the confirmation email on her laptop and she thought, "This exists now. This is real. This is mine." And the feeling was clean and uncomplicated and very different from the feeling of most things she had done in the last several years, which had always been tangled up with what Patrick thought, what Patrick needed, what fit into the life Patrick was building. This fit into the life she was building. The apartment was taking shape too. Not fast, she bought things slowly, when she found the right ones, not to fill space but to fill it right. A bookshelf that was too big for the wall but fit perfectly. A kitchen rug in terracotta that she had seen in a shop window and gone back to 3 times before she bought it. A print for the living room wall from an artist whose work she had loved for years and never hung because Patrick thought it was too bold. It was bold, that was the point. She had her first proper dinner party in the apartment on a Saturday night. Tasha and 2 other friends. 5 people around a table meant for 4. Eating pasta she had made herself and drinking wine that was not expensive but was good. And laughing at things that had nothing to do with grief or marriage or anything painful. At 10 o'clock Tasha caught her eye across the table and gave her a look that said, "Look at you. Just look at you." Naomi smiled back and looked around at her table, her food, her apartment, her friends, and felt something she had not felt in what seemed like a very long time. She felt like herself. Mr. Osai filed the divorce petition on a Tuesday. The filing included 3 things: a formal petition for dissolution of marriage, a full financial disclosure prepared by his office based on the documents Naomi had provided, and a detailed accounting of the hidden account, account number, transaction history, and an estimate of its current value. The hidden account changed everything about the tone of the filing. A divorce petition without it would have been a straightforward marital dissolution with asset division. A divorce petition with it was something else, a document that alleged one party had engaged in financial concealment during the marriage. That word, concealment, had weight. It had legal weight and it had professional weight, and it was the kind of word that did not stay private. The plan for the service was Naomi's idea. Mr. Osai had presented two options. They could serve Patrick at the house, or they could serve him at his place of work. The house would be quieter. She had chosen his work. She was not there to see it happen. She did not need to be there. She had not engineered this for the satisfaction of watching. She had engineered it because she had spent 6 years being managed and placated, and made to feel that the pieces of her life were too big or complicated or inconvenient for her to hold herself. And she wanted Patrick to understand in the most concrete possible way that she had held every piece and knew exactly what they were worth. But Tasha had a contact who worked in the building. So she heard. The server arrived at Patrick's firm at 10:15 on a Wednesday morning, not early enough to catch the building empty, not late enough to miss the mid-morning foot traffic in the lobby. Patrick was stepping off the elevator from a meeting on the 12th floor when he was approached. Two senior colleagues were with him. They had been discussing something that made all three of them laugh just before the elevator opened, and Patrick was still carrying the expression of that laughter when the server stepped forward and said his name. He was handed a sealed envelope. He took it with the automatic reflex of a man who receives documents regularly and does not yet understand why someone is handing him this one in this place at this time. Then he saw the return address on the envelope, Law Offices of Osai and Associates. His colleagues, according to Tasha's contact, looked at him and then looked at the envelope and then looked away in the careful manner of people who understand that they have just witnessed something private. They said they would catch up with him later. They left him standing in the lobby. He stood there for a while apparently, just stood holding the envelope while the lobby moved around him. People coming in from the street, people waiting for elevators, the security desk in its usual business, all of it moving, him standing still. Naomi was in a meeting with a new client when Tasha texted. It happened. She felt her phone buzz on the table and she looked down at the text and felt something quiet and complete move through her chest. Not triumph exactly, not cruelty, something cleaner than that. She put her phone face down and returned her full attention to the client in front of her. When the meeting ended, she sat alone in the conference room for a few minutes. She thought about the morning she had found the earring. The morning she had read 237 messages with her hands perfectly steady. The morning she had left. She had carried that weight through every step since then, through Tasha's guest room and Mr. Osai's office, and the empty apartment and the new bed and the business launch, and all the small daily acts of building a new life. And today a sealed envelope in a lobby said, "I see what you did. I see all of it, and there are consequences." She pulled out her notebook and wrote 3 words. Step 1 done. She closed it, picked up her bag, and walked out into the afternoon. The thing about hiding something in writing is that writing survives. Patrick had opened the account digitally, transferred money digitally, maintained it digitally. There were timestamps and account numbers and transaction logs and IP addresses. The disclosure Mr. Osai had filed did not contain everything. It contained enough. Enough to make the picture clear to anyone reading it. Within 48 hours of the filing, Patrick had retained a divorce attorney. Within 72 hours, his firm's compliance department had sent him an internal memo requesting a meeting. He was a portfolio manager. His role came with strict financial disclosure requirements. Every personal account, every investment, every significant asset had to be declared annually and reviewed by compliance. He had not declared the private account. He had opened it 26 months ago and not mentioned it once in the disclosures he had signed. At the compliance meeting, they asked him about it, and he gave them the answer he had prepared, which was that it was a personal savings account that had not met the disclosure threshold. The compliance officer looked at him over the table with the flat expression of someone who has heard this particular kind of explanation before and does not find it persuasive. He was told the firm would be conducting an internal review. He was told he was suspended with pay pending the outcome. He went home that evening, and Brianna was in the kitchen making dinner. He stood in the doorway and looked at her and thought about how 2 months ago his life had looked manageable. He had a wife who was steady and capable and made a good home. He had a job with a good income. He had Brianna on the side who was exciting and easy and gave him the feeling of getting away with something. The three things had seemed, from where he was standing inside them, like a sustainable arrangement. Now his wife was gone. His income was suspended. And Brianna was standing in his kitchen stirring something in a pot, and she had been doing that for 6 weeks, and it had stopped feeling exciting approximately 3 weeks ago. He told her about the suspension. She turned from the stove slowly. She looked at him. He watched her process it, the way her expression moved through something he could not quite read. She set the spoon down. "For how long?" she asked. "I don't know yet. Could be a few weeks, could be longer." "And the divorce, what does the settlement look like?" He told her it was complicated. He said that word again, complicated, the one that had been getting less effective every time he used it. She was quiet for a moment. Then she asked, "How much is complicated?" He told her about the account. He had to. She had already found the letter from the firm, and he had not been able to explain it fully without explaining everything. He told her about the account, and she stood very still and looked at him with an expression he would not forget, not angry, not devastated, not even hurt exactly, just recalculating. The look of someone reviewing a decision they made with information they did not have and now have. She moved out 10 days later. She did not make a scene about it. She did not throw things. She packed in 2 trips on a Saturday afternoon, took her suitcase and her 2 boxes, and left with a civil goodbye and no backward glance. He did not blame her. He was not in a position to blame anyone for leaving. The internal review at his firm concluded 3 weeks later with a finding that he had failed to disclose a material financial account in violation of his employment agreement. He was terminated. He sat in an office and was handed a letter, and he took it with the same automatic reflex with which he had taken the envelope in the lobby weeks before he had understood what taking an envelope from a stranger could mean. The house went into the settlement calculations. Mr. Osei was thorough. The hidden account, the marital contributions to the mortgage, the joint savings, the pension, all of it was accounted for. The final settlement proposal arrived, and Patrick's new attorney read it and told him he should take it because contesting it was going to cost more than the contest was worth. He took it. The house would be sold. The proceeds would be split with Naomi receiving the larger share given the financial concealment. She would receive half of the hidden account. She would receive her portion of the joint savings. She would receive a formal acknowledgement in legal terms that she had been wronged and was owed. Patrick, who had once had a wife and a secret lover and a good job and a house and a hidden account, now had a sublease on a studio apartment, no income, a legal bill, and a firm he could never return to. He had made his choices, each one, and the choices had been made freely. The consequences had arrived at the same speed as the decisions and with considerably more staying power. The divorce was finalized on a Thursday morning in a courtroom that smelled like old carpet and institutional coffee. Naomi wore a dove-gray dress and her grandmother's earrings. Mr. Osei sat beside her, and across the room Patrick sat with his attorney, and she glanced at him once, just once, with the same neutral steadiness she had practiced on herself since the morning she had read those messages. He looked diminished, not cruel or dramatic, just smaller than she remembered, like something that had lost its shape. She looked away and did not look back. The judge reviewed the settlement, asked each attorney a few procedural questions, and signed. It took less than 40 minutes from entry to exit. 6 years of marriage dissolved in under an hour. She had expected that to feel like more. It felt like signing a contract, clean and final and done. She and Mr. Osai shook hands in the hall outside. He said, "It was a pleasure, Naomi," she said. "I hope not to need you again." He smiled and said, "That's always the goal." She walked out into the October morning alone. The sky was a clear pale blue, the kind that sits above the city like a promise that has not yet decided what it will become. She stood on the courthouse steps for 1 full minute and just breathed. Then she got into her car and drove to her office. Bright Signal Co. had been running for 2 months and it had 7 clients. 7. She had not advertised beyond her own network. Every single client had come by referral or by someone having heard of her through someone who had heard of her through someone else. The oldest and most reliable form of marketing, the kind that only works if the work is actually good. The work was good. She knew it was good because her clients told her, and because she could see the results in the numbers she tracked for them. The settlement money landed in her account 2 weeks after the signing. She sat at her kitchen table and looked at the number and thought about what it represented, not just money, but years, her contributions, her trust, the half of their shared life that had always been hers even when someone else was managing it. She put a significant portion into savings. She paid off the one remaining debt she was carrying. She set aside a budget for the business. And then she did something she had been thinking about since she first moved in. She booked the wall in her apartment's living room for a custom mural. An artist she had followed on social media for 2 years, a young woman who did large-scale abstract work in bold blues and terracottas and soft whites, came and painted it over 2 days. Naomi sat at her kitchen table with a glass of water and watched the wall become something extraordinary. When it was done, she stood in the middle of the room and looked at it and said, "Yes, that." She had not been looking for anyone. She wants to be clear about that. She had not been going to events or accepting setups or keeping her eyes open in that particular way. She had been busy. She had been present in her own life in the specific way that becomes possible when you stop trying to maintain a version of yourself that another person needs and start just being the version you actually are. His name was Gabriel. He worked in urban planning, and he was at a small industry event that Naomi attended in November to speak on a panel about small business marketing. He was in the audience, and he asked a good question after the panel, a thoughtful one, the kind that showed he had been listening carefully rather than just waiting for his turn to speak. She answered it and moved on. He found her at the networking portion afterward. He introduced himself and said, "That was a genuinely useful panel, which is rare." She laughed, a real laugh, the kind that comes without deciding to. They talked for 40 minutes. He was easy to talk to in the way that some people are easy, not performing ease but actually at ease, comfortable in his own skin, interested in what the person in front of him was saying. He did not ask about her personal life, and she did not offer it. They talked about work and the city and a book she had mentioned on the panel that he had also read. He asked if he could call her sometime. She said he could and gave him her number. He called on the following Tuesday evening, and they talked for an hour. He called the Tuesday after that, and they talked for 90 minutes and made plans for coffee on the Saturday. She told Tasha about him, and Tasha said, "Tell me everything." And Naomi said, "There is not much to tell yet. He is kind and he pays attention and he makes me laugh. That's all." Tasha said, "Naomi, that is everything." She thought about that on the drive home. She thought about what everything meant and what she wanted everything to look like from here. Not the version of everything she had been living before, the one with the smooth surface and the hollow underneath. She wanted the kind of everything that was honest all the way through. That did not hide anything. That could be looked at from all sides. She did not know yet if Gabriel was that. She did not need to know yet. She was not in a hurry. For the first time in a long time, she was in no hurry at all. Her business was real. Her apartment was hers. Her money was hers. Her grief was mostly behind her. Her life, the actual shape of it, the daily texture of it, was more fully hers than it had been in years. She had left without a word, and the silence had been the beginning of every good thing that followed. On a quiet Saturday morning in December, she sat at her kitchen table with her coffee and her notebook, and the terracotta rug under her feet, and the mural on the living room wall visible through the open doorway, and she wrote at the top of a fresh page, "This is my season." And she meant it completely.